Good evening and welcome to the Gurnee Village Board regular meeting of December 16th, 2019. Roll call, please.
Balmas.
Present.
Hood.
Here.
Thorstensen.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Garner. O'Brien.
Present.
5 present, 1 absent.
And Trustee Garner did let us know he wasn't able to make the meeting tonight. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will start with approval of the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Balmas,
Second.
second by Trustee O'Brien. Roll call, please, Andy.
Balmas.
Aye.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
5 aye.
Motion carries. Patrick, please read the consent agenda into the record.
Sure, and just before I do, just want to point out on the bills, as I listed in my notes, probably the biggest amount of bills we've seen, I think since I've been here, and 8.6 million of that is the fire, police pension contributions, and then paying off those Macy's bonds early. So when you take those two out, we're back down to where we normally are, but I just wanted to call that out quick for you. So, item number 1, approval of the minutes from the December 2nd, 2019 Village Board meeting. Item number 2, approval of ordinance 2019-83, accepting the final plat of Market Square at Southridge Phase 2. Item number 3, approval of payroll for period ending December 6, 2019 in the amount of $1,210,839.89. Item number 4, approval of bills for period ending December 16, 2019 in the amount of $9,878,462.80.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read into the record?
Motion.
Motion by Trustee Ross, second by Trustee Balmas. Roll call, please.
Balmas.
Aye.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
5 aye.
All right, motion carries. We'll move on to petitions and communications. First is a proclamation for the Lake County, Illinois Crime Stoppers Month in January 2020. Crime Stoppers of Lake County is a nonprofit organization primarily funded by private donations, and Crime Stoppers of Lake County has paid cash rewards to persons providing information leading to over 6,930 arrests and convictions and the recovery of over $30 million worth of contraband and recovered stolen property since April 26, 1983. And Crime Stoppers of Lake County benefits the citizens and the business communities in and around the village of Gurnee by partnering with them and with surrounding law enforcement agencies. And the village of Gurnee and the Gurnee Police Department fully support the efforts of Crime Stoppers of Lake County. Now therefore I, Christina Kavarik, Mayor of the village of Gurnee, do hereby encourage support for Crime Stoppers of Lake County and proclaim January 2020 as Lake County Crime Stoppers Month in the village of Gurnee. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee O'Brien, second by Trustee Thorstensen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, it's Crime Stopper Month. That is it for petitions and communications, and we have major presentations this evening. So first up is the Assistant to the Administrator, Jack Linehan, on an updated unified communications policy. Pat, you want to introduce it while Jack gets set up?
Jack's been working on this. We had policy in place that we approved a while back. Since that time, obviously, social media has changed. The way we reach out and interact with residents has changed. So Jack worked with the internal communications team that he put together that had a cross-section of the village, as well as Trustee Hood on it, updated the policy, and tonight he's going to present the updated policy to the village board, and then you'll see it is later under new business, a resolution to adopt that policy and have that be approved formally by the village board.
All right, thank you, Pat. Thank you, Mayor and Board. So I'm presenting tonight with our management intern, Catherine Gale. She helped develop this policy, and so we're going to be presenting together.
All right, hi everyone. So I'm just going to quickly outline what the current policy is. So the current Unified Communications Policy was adopted by the Village Board in 2013 with Resolution 2013-01. And then in 2015, it was updated with minor staff edits to Appendix A, which highlighted authorized staff users. And basically, it just occurred because there was new staff coming on board. The focus of the current policy was on one-way communications with comments closed or really just not allowed, and the idea was the village allowed comments, but instead of interacting via those social media forums, they were directing people to then call the village. The policy was written prior to village adoption of Facebook, which allows comments by default. And when the policy was adopted, Twitter was a primary source for social media, but now Facebook has really become the prime social media account. And the current policy is restrictive and non-flexible for emergency communications. So this kind of involves certain individuals and staffs having to be informed of posts before they go out. So Jack will focus on how the new policy kind of offers more flexibility for that.
Sure. So as we kind of look at the process as we updated our policy, so this came about, we had our Gurnee Communications Committee. So we began in May 2019 this year, got together to really start getting all of the communicators in the village together on a monthly basis. So this committee is a cross-section of village employees who have various social media or communication duties. Includes myself, trustee Tom Hood sits in for the village board, Sean Gaylor with the police department, Jody Luca with the fire department, Carrie Suarez, one of our web specialists, and then Catherine, and then Ellen as well for the community or the economic development side. So we started looking at various policies out there, and we're starting to look with kind of an idea in mind of looking for policies that allowed for some two-way communication to help do public information. So one of the things that I always say is the village, we do public information, not public relations. So what we try to do is if a resident has a question or they're asking us for information for further clarification or looking for information, we like to help share it. What we don't do is we don't get into debates with residents or try to argue a certain point or kind of do a public relations side like the corporate side may do. So what we were looking at too is we were also looking at policies that are really easy to understand, not just for our own staff. The current policy, many staff aren't very familiar with, to one that is easy to understand, simple, and that the public can understand too, so that they know if they're commenting on our social media, what the rules and regulations are in relation with other local governments.
So just a quick outline of what the proposed policy is. It's really just more simple and easy for both internal and external users. So it's easier language, it's shorter, and offers more flexibility. Then Appendix A, which is a part of the policy, will then be posted to social media accounts and the village website for people to easily go to and kind of just see what the policy and procedures are. The policy language reflects best practices from nearby municipalities, and it's 4 pages in total, with 2 pages outlining the 8 policy areas that Jack will focus on in a minute. 1 page is Appendix A, which is the public-facing policy, and another page is Appendix B, which outlines the authorized social media pages of the village.
So if we look at the actual policy itself, so it's a 2-page policy. Again, really cut and dry. We didn't try to get too much in the minutia. Our previous policy did focus on, using AP style and various kind of internal practices that we can still manage internally and with our own users without having it a policy that we're either then in non-compliance with or not following. So the current policy has kind of 8 separate areas, so I'm going to walk real quick through what those are. The first area it talks about is in regards to employee use. And this is essentially just how employees use social media. One of the things is it refers back to our village employee handbook, which does have a section on authorized users, essentially that only a certain list of users are able to speak for the village. So that way employees who may be wanting to operate on best intentions, they're not representing the village because that's not their position to be doing so. They're not an authorized user. So it refers back to the personnel policy. That way, too, if the employee handbook changes, the policy doesn't become out of date. The second item we looked at was authorized accounts and authorized users. So essentially, this then references the different social media accounts we have. It points back to Appendix B. So this can be updated with, as staff kind of moves through. If there's new social media comes out, we can approve it, the village administrator can, without having to come back to the village board. So it allows some flexibility there. The third step there is the process for posting. So this is looking at essentially what we're posting, trying to maintain the same language and communication style with the village, and being respectful of intellectual property rights. The fourth option of this area shares kind of where we can get into resident inquiries, and this is how we respond to resident inquiries. This became a key part of what we do. A lot of our interactions are through private messenger and trying to reach out to residents that have questions for issues. Item number 5 of this, it does kind of point to, and there's more language here, into records retention. So this is an important area as we look at Local Records Retention Act and how we maintain records with social media, and that essentially the social media is not the originator of it. We try to share information that exists in other locations, so it's not the place that we're storing it. So for us, it just helps clarify that this is a place for us to share, but not necessarily create new records. A little bit of it too, some mention of after-hours responses. So one of the things that we find is for general inquiries, social media is 24/7. For staff, for some users, such as like myself, who are exempt, we can respond 24/7 if need be. Other users, it essentially clarifies a little bit further. The 7th item is back to linking towards the website. So this is one of the things we do regularly, sharing to our website as a director. So we want to push people to the website for more information. Social media, one of the difficulties is you can't always share as much information as we have. So what we're able to do is then point people right back to the website for further clarification. And finally, the final part of it is back to linking to third parties. So we get a lot of requests to share different events, businesses, lots of promotions. They may or may not be involved with Gurnee. We try to keep that to our Gurnee's Got It page if people have local events, promotions. So what this does, it helps clarify too that we share Visit Lake County, other agencies or other trusted sources such as the National Weather Service. Those are things we will share. But for our general pages, we're not sharing just general requests. So I guess with that, if there's any questions, happy to open up for any questions.
Questions, Trustee Thorstensen?
Thanks, Jack. So I did see on the back page that it does include your Nextdoor account as classifying that within social media. But what I didn't see, so I'm presuming it's not classified as social media, is your emergency notification system, Blackboard Connect?
Yep. Yes, correct. So we're not classifying that in as this, so it's not a social media account essentially. It is more of a one-way communication source.
And that does fall under a different policy, though,
Right.
Blackboard, when we're allowed to use, what reasons we have to use it and stuff.
Yep.
Thanks.
Other questions? We'll be voting on this during the regular business. All right. Thank you. Good work, both of you. Catherine and Jack. And thank you, Trustee Hood. All right, then our next report is our financial forecast and our multi-year capital plan that I know Brian and his team put a lot of blood and sweat into.
Mostly tears. Take it away. All right, so there should have been copies of the forecast and the capital plan at your spots tonight, so I just want to walk through that. We're going to keep the presentation similar to what we did last year. I'm not going to go into super number crunching detail on the forecast side, just kind of hit the broader picture. And then when we get into the capital plan, Heather will come up and we'll kind of tag team walking through that one. So the multi-year forecast, the purpose of it is to confirm the long-term sustainability of the funds, identify threats to services in the capital plan. It is a projection of potential outcomes. It's certainly not an absolute indicator by any means. It's kind of a tool for us to run what-if scenarios and see what the worst-case scenario is, and I got a chart in here that kind of freaks everybody out. That is the worst-case scenario. We'll spend some time on that a little later. And then the multi-year capital plan that identifies the long-term strategy for replacing our infrastructure, vehicles and equipment, things like that. Provides a nice scope of what the village is actually responsible from an infrastructure standpoint, so miles of roads, culverts, things like that. When you see it all kind of in one document, it's kind of awe-inspiring to see what we're actually responsible for replacing and keeping up. And it gives a preview of budget capital priorities when we look at the immediate next fiscal year, so fiscal year 2021 in this case. This chart just shows the financial planning and reporting process. We start with the two multi-year plans. That's obviously long-term planning. That leads us into the annual budget, which is really short-term, just for the year. And then we report on that short-term, and then at the end of the year, the auditors come in and help us compile the comprehensive annual financial report or audit, and that really rounds out the year. The structure of the forecast, we look at revenues and major expenses. We look at a 5-year history, the current estimate for the current fiscal year, and then a 5-year projection. Revenues, expenses, capital funding, and fund balance are all presented within the report. When we look at major general fund revenue scenarios, we try to model this after the theory of economic cycles. So we look and say, what is the baseline or the long-term trend over the long term, and then an expansion and a contraction. So contraction being a recession in the next immediate fiscal year, and expansion being economy staying in an expansionary period, growing, essentially. Funds included in the forecast, the general fund, the water and sewer operating, and the water and sewer capital, and then motor fuel tax because of the role it plays in the capital plan, and then in the capital improvement fund are all included in the document. Some key decision points that we've had over the last few years here. Use of debt service as it rolls off for capital. We have built into the forecast $675,000 to the capital fund. We either do this through a budgeted number or surplus. We've been lucky the last few years to be able to do that through surplus. The only exception was the year that Great Wolf was transitioning. We did put that in the budget that year because we weren't sure what the surplus was going to be. Water rate plan. We have a long-term water rate plan that expires in fiscal year 2021. The last increase there is May 1 of 20. So we'll be reviewing that next summer, see where we're at, and see where we're at in relation to the capital funding needs for the water and sewer. In the water and sewer fund, we had planned drawdowns of the fund balance, about $450,000 annually. That really hasn't happened. It's been offset by surpluses in that fund, so even though we planned for it, we were able to budget conservatively enough that we didn't have to draw down that fund balance much. Also, you'll see later, it helped us offset some of the debt we incurred for the Knowles Road Tower. We were able to use fund balance for that. I did include the accelerated debt service for the IEPA loan for the tower in the forecast, and then included a debt service number for fire station number 3. We don't have a lot of clarity on this yet. I've been working with actually Gurnee Bank and our financial advisors to look at what this would look like. We'll bring that forward at a future meeting, but I plugged in the debt service number equal to what the Series 2011 that we just paid off was. So it's super conservative, probably way more than we need, but if we end up paying it off earlier, then that's great. Threats to financial sustainability. Obviously, as a service organization, everybody deals with this. Personnel costs outpace revenue growth in the absence of new growth. New growth is very important. State budget situation, we saw that impact our home rule sales tax and our income tax last year. So who knows what the next steps will be. Changing sales tax landscape. This got a little bit of clarity last year when they started taxing internet sales, at least for the use tax portion, but it doesn't do anything to collect the home rule sales tax. So that's kind of the next step in that. And then, of course, the overall economy, interest rates, how that affects not only the interest we earn on our funds, but also the pensions, what the pension investment returns are, which greatly impacts our contribution to those every year. Opportunities, 911 consolidation. We saw this over the last couple of years, continuing to work on that. Revitalizing East Grand, that would be something when we talk about new growth, or commercial growth, sales tax, that would be something that would come out of that. Workforce turnover, I think we have something like, I want to just look at Christine real quick here, 20% in the next 3 years, close enough, of our workforce turning over, so managing that. setting that up for, a community that is largely built out rather than opposed to, growing like the 90s and mid-2000s. Impacts of what the big three do, Six Flags, Great Wolf, Gurnee Mills, they're all doing stuff obviously to keep their operations running, and what is the impact on our sales taxes, or any taxes that we would collect from those three. And then monetizing assets. This is a new one this year, and I think it was a great example when we did the cell tower, something that's kind of out of our area of expertise that we were able to monetize and use it, not put it back into the general fund, but use it for capital. So I think that was a great idea. Jack kind of spearheaded that one and got us accelerated our capital program. So maybe there'll be other opportunities for similar things. New to the forecast, or at least newer, the firefighter grant, Series 2011 debt service we paid off, so that came off. The Hunt Club Aquatic Center came off this year. Fire Station 3 debt service came on. And then we had this in there last year, but the IEPA loan payback period with the accelerated payoff. In the general fund, I was talking about we model major revenues in 3 different scenarios. These are just a list of the revenues that we model. I highlighted amusement tax and hotel tax just to point out that we have incentive agreements with those two. We talked about modeling the major revenues based on the theory of economic cycles. So just real quick, our baseline model tries to capture that, growth over the long term. Expansion model tries to capture an expansion period in the economy. And then the contraction model tries to capture a recession in the immediate following year, followed by expansion. So when you crunch all those numbers together, this is what the total major revenues look like in the 3 different scenarios here. The blue is the baseline, so that's long-term revenue growth. As you can see in the spreadsheet, I actually have like 10 more years hidden to the left here. But you can see the long-term linear trend lines right up with our baseline model, which I think validates kind of what we were trying to accomplish there. The expansion model in green, obviously continuing with an expansionary period, and then the yellow one shows the dip, recession next year, and then continuing on at the expansionary period. So that's the revenue side. On the expenditure side, we look at salaries, health insurance, property liability, work comp insurance, pensions, and debt service in detail. And just to show this debt service chart, just because we paid it off and makes me happy. I wanted to show the spike this year for fiscal year 2020. Obviously, that's the additional money to pay off that Series 2011 bond. And then next year, you see the first one with just the blue there. That's the IEPA loan, followed by the marker for the Fire Station 3. So that's coming up in red. So here's the chart that I was saying kind of freaks everybody out a little bit. This is fund balance, general fund balance as a percentage of expenditures using the 3 models. A couple things to really note here when you look at this chart. And this is positive. If a recession happened, and that's the yellow line, so if a recession happened next year and we did absolutely nothing in response for the next 5 years, we wouldn't fall below our fund balance target until 2025. So just that, I think, shows the importance of, one, having a fund balance at the level we have, but also that we can go a long way and not make any adjustments and still 5 years out would hit that, be under that fund balance number. The next chart will show you a little bit. Also, what is not factored in here is how conservatively we budget and the conservative estimates in this forecast. We historically have, in normal years, anywhere from $1 million to $1.5 million surplus in the general fund. That's not built into here. This assumes things like every position in the village is filled year-round. So those kind of things are built into this model that are conservative and give us that worst-case scenario. Also, just to note on this slide, 2 or 3 years ago, we put into place the fiscal contingency policy that we update every year during the budget. That is basically a list from the departments of steps that could be taken if a recession happened. So we refresh that every year. And so if that did happen, we obviously have a list of things that we could take as immediate steps to combat a recession. So this chart I added, it shows fund balance, but just total dollars, and I added the red line in this one shows what we predicted in our 2017 model when we did this. So you can see consistently every year we've outperformed it. The dip you see in 2020 is the paying off of the bonds. So we're able to put ourselves in a better position by leveraging prior year surpluses to get out of debt. If a recession happened next year, we don't have that $1.2 million expenditure. So that really gives us some flexibility moving forward. But the point is we consistently outperform what the modeling says, just because it's so conservative. Moving to water and sewer fund. Now, revenues, as I mentioned, we have a water rate plan through fiscal year 2021. We assume a 0.5% annual drop in usage. Last year, I think I had that at 1%, and it looks like it's starting to level out a little bit over the last couple of years here. Expenses the same as general fund. We also add in the CLC Jawa expense and then the Knowles Road Tower debt service. And then in the capital funding, we talked about the drawdown and the 2.8 million annual infrastructure number. I believe that came from my Baxter Woodman study somewhere around 2012. And that's kind of what we've been using as our marker to try to get to. And the good news is, after next year's rate drop, we do get to about 3 million. After next year's Jawa rate drop, I should say, we do get to about 3 million annually in the water and sewer fund. This just shows water and sewer fund balance here. You can see the drop there between 20 and 21. That's using $1 million, million to $1.5 million. It's going to end up somewhere in between there to essentially pay for some of the IEPA loan for the Knowles Tower. And then it levels out after that. The capital fund, we look at on the revenue side, that expiring debt service I mentioned, $675,000 transfer that comes in. We also have been drawing down the impact fee fund balance to pay for some sidewalk programs. We have home rule sales tax, half of that goes in the capital fund. We used just the baseline assumption in the capital fund when we forecasted that. On the expenditure side, a multi-year capital plan, and also built in the transfer for the bittersweet capital that we had talked about last meeting before that. And then in the capital fund, trying to maintain a fund balance around $1 million in case anything happened that we needed some emergency funding. We had somewhere to go besides the general fund balance. On the MFT fund, this is money that is dedicated for roads. It's about $850,000 annually. That number should go up, but I did not include that in here because it's pending some legislation, or at least clarification of the legislation that was passed by the state. Haven't quite figured out what expenses they're going to try to charge to the local fund yet. So as soon as we get some clarity on that, that number will go up. Here, because it's dedicated to roads, we just want to have some fund balance in there, so we try to keep it above 250, and we utilize this, as we'll see when we get to the capital plan, every other year for the road program. So really, conclusions, recommendations, just a couple things here that changed from last year, and a lot of stuff that we're doing. So when we talk about, for the last few years here, diversifying our revenue base, we adjusted the hotel and amusement tax. Makes us a little less reliant on sales tax, so kind of diversifying that piece. Reviewing fund balance targets, which we've done through the financial policies and the budget process. Managed workforce turnover, we talked about. Segregating one-time revenues, I think I can't tell you how important it is that we didn't plow that cell tower money back in the general fund. That's huge, because then we don't got to rely on it next year. And then when we look at fees or anything, just know what our full cost recovery is, whether we want to jump to that number or not. At least know what what we should be charging to recover our costs there. And with that, I'll take any questions on the forecast piece, and then I'll invite Heather up here and we'll do the capital plan part.
Questions for Brian? Good job. This has been a good tool for us.
It's a nice exercise, not only to show us what we have coming up for capital funding in the next year, but again, I think it's important that we always keep that worst case scenario in the back of our heads and plan for that, because it could happen, as we saw in 2008 and 2009. So at least know what that scope is. All right, moving into the capital plan. Our capital plan is largely funded on a pay-as-you-go basis. General capital, in other words, non-water sewer. home rule sales tax, motor fuel tax, expiring debt service, we talked about transfers from the impact fee funds, and then capital grants. Fire department's been hugely successful in getting those, getting grants for equipment and things. On the water and sewer side, obviously charges for service, drawing down those fund reserves, and then that low-interest IEPA loan for the Knowles Road Tower. Looking at the capital plan by fund here, again, obviously, three major funds: motor fuel tax, capital improvement fund, and then water and sewer fund. We see fiscal year 21 program totals $15.6 million. Just want to point out that fiscal year 21 and 22 both include $4 million each for Fire Station 3. So if it looks a little higher and inflated than what it normally is, that is the reason. Then it levels out somewhere between 9 and 10 million. And the 9 and 10 million could change based on, again, surplus transfers from the general fund that we would want to spend in future years. Capital plan by system here, so this just breaks it down between transportation, stormwater management, buildings and improvements, vehicles and equipment, and water and sewer. Transportation is typically the largest category, somewhere between 3.5 and 5.5 million. Again, depending on what we have for surplus transfers, like in 2021, we're proposing spending some surplus transfers from prior years and also the cell tower money. Stormwater management is pretty steady at 300,000 here, somewhere between 300 and 5,000. We identified some culvert work that we're going to try to target in 2021, so that's why that's up 580,000. Buildings and improvements, here we see the $4 million for the Fire Station 3. Vehicles and equipment, this one stays pretty steady except for the years when the more expensive fire equipment comes up. Make sure John's awake back there. Water and sewer system, $3 million next year, and then 2.25 in fiscal year 2022, and then you see it comes up to about 3.25 or just over $3 million. That's when we get to that target that the Baxter-Woodman study from 2012 said we should be at. Took us a little while, but we got there eventually with the JAWA rate drop and freezing that rate and putting that plan into effect. And again, in the out years, it could really change depending on what surpluses are transferred from the general fund or what cell tower money might come up. Looking specifically at the transportation system, fluctuates obviously here on years when we utilize MFT funds. We don't have MFT funds programmed in for 2021, and the program is still about 5.4 million. That's because of those prior year surpluses and the money from the assets that we had sold off. And Heather can speak more to this, I'm sure she will, but the target here was 6 million to be on a 20-year program. We're on track for a 25-year program, not counting any surpluses again that may come over for the general fund. So we're still in a pretty good position, and some of the maintenance programs we could do extend the lifetime of those roads. Also, we have some reconstruction, total reconstruction in here. If I get off base, just elbow me. So we have some reconstruction in here, and obviously once those roads are done being reconstructed, that reconstruction money will stretch even further the resurfacing program, because it's obviously cheaper. And that's it. Again, the drawdowns for the sidewalk program coming over from the impact fee fund. I will let Heather go into some more detail.
All right, so some of the stuff people like to know most about, I guess, is which roads we're resurfacing, so I'll get to that right after we go through this slide. So we have 2.5 million in street resurfacing, 650,000 in the reconstruction that Brian just alluded to, that's Ferndale. 500,000 in patching work throughout the village, that extends the life of the pavement that we mentioned earlier, and 60,000 in bridge and curb flat work. We have 3 bridges in the village that were evaluated this past year, and that's the estimate of the repairs necessary for those 3 bridges. We have 1.2 million for improvements for Stern School Road. Previously this year, we brought before you the opportunity to extend a carriage walk on the south side of Stern School Road as part of the Lake Dot project, and so that's what we budgeted in for that amount. We also have 125,000 for the annual sidewalk maintenance, where we inspect 1/5 of the village per year. In this area, we have a zone 2, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and 125,000 for the street light upgrades, which will wrap up our program for LED upgrades.
In fiscal year 2022, we have the $4 million that we're budgeting for road rehab, including the MFT money that year, and $125,000 to complete the Knowles Road sidewalk connection. So here are the streets. West side of town, we have Dolcetto, Napa, Danielson, and Davidson. Further south, we have Leonard, Gloucester, Dunhill, and Compton. On the east side of town, we have part of Northwestern Avenue. We didn't do the whole thing, so we're phasing that in. Clearview Court, Highland Avenue, we're getting around to after some repairs in previous years, and rebuilding Lee Avenue. We also have Ferndale Street, as I mentioned, as a reconstruction after we've had the water main project this past year. Deer Run Court, Fox Lane, Elm, Cross Road, Cross Court, Cole Court, and Plymouth Court, just to name a few. Then for the transportation system, as I mentioned a little bit ago, Stern School Road is shown on the right side of the slide there. That's where we're putting the carriage walk on the south side. And on the left-hand side of the screen here is the Knowles Road path that we've had to push off 1 year, so because the path on the south side of Stearns cost $1.2-ish million. We pushed the Knowles Road out 1 year to be able to afford that. Here we have the lighting upgrades for next year. So some of the subdivisions that this includes is Westgate, Pembroke, Ridgeway Estates, Steeple Point Estates of Churchill Hunt, The Pines, and Aberdare Estates. So for the most part, it's up in the one region, but this past year we didn't get to Aberdare Estates in time, so we have that slated for next year. Back to you.
So looking at the stormwater management system here, this is funding we talked about $300,000 a year. Right now, looking at next year, fiscal year 21, about $580,000, and that's some of the culvert work actually that Heather will talk about right now.
So here we have $270,000 for the culvert work under Waveland. This will be done at the same time as the water main project we'll be having on Waveland. Also at Grove and Boulevard View, we've heard a lot from residents in that area about water ponding quite rapidly, so we're going to take a look at that and kind of see what can be done to help alleviate those concerns. We have $150,000 for land acquisition. That's our typical floodplain property acquisition, so there's 3 in the mix for next year. $85,000 for landscaping and drainage improvements that we get calls on throughout the year so that we can help tackle those, and $75,000 for televising our stormwater sewers. That's like 10% annually is what I'm trying to get at. The next slide, I believe, shows the area that we're going to focus on primarily next year is Fairway Ridge, and if we have money left over, if we get a good unit price, we'll continue on with other storm sewers.
Water and sewer fund here, just kind of reiterate where we were, what we talked about during the forecast. $3 million proposed for next year. Have to go over those projects. And then in fiscal year 22, that drops down to $2.25 million. And then we get back up to that $3 million number that we were targeting from the Baxter Woodman study. There's a JAWA rate drop this year and next year, so that's how we end up getting to that in fiscal year 23, that $3 million target that we were looking at.
So for the water and sewer system this year, we have $1 million scheduled for phase 1 on Old Grand Avenue. It's a 2-part job. We'll finish the rest of it the following year. This will take us from Grand and First, up First to Old Grand, and all the way east to Ferndale. So it's kind of shown there on the next slide, you'll see. $550,000 is slated for water main replacement on Waveland, which will coincide with also the culvert replacement that I mentioned in the slide before. $540,000 for enhancement to the wells, lift stations, and water towers. That's related to cathodic protection. So that gives the hot soil something else to attack as opposed to attacking our infrastructure. So that's what that'll focus on. We also have, let's see, the Knowles Road Water Tower. We got to finish that up, the $400,000 left. $260,000 for the engineering and televising work. This will help pay for the cost to design next year's or the following year's water main project, as well as set up televising for our sanitary sewer system, 10% per year annually, which is industry standard. Then we have the $225,000 for SCADA system upgrades, as well as the Lee Avenue generator for $40,000. So here you'll see the 2 projects for the water main. Option A, or Project A rather, is the phase 1 for Old Grand, and Project B is the water main on Waveland and the culvert. Looking at vehicles and equipment, over the
forecast period or the capital plan period here. Fiscal year 21 proposing about 1.75 between the general capital fund and the water and sewer capital fund. And then that levels off to right around 2 million every year. Looking at what's included in the 21 kind of proposed here. In administration, there's about 450,000 of various IT projects. I know it's categorized in the plan under one computer, hardware, or software line. I'm working on splitting that out in different categories. Director Velkover gave me a pretty detailed spreadsheet, and we agreed on some categories. I just ran out of time to get them categorized in those things. So we're working on that for the final and for the budget. But security and access control in there, audio and visual systems, communications systems and services for dispatch, network hardware, expansion of finance, HR, ERP system. We're looking at a couple additional modules next year, and then some network security applications. In the police department, it's about 259,000 there, looking at 5 squads. Just a reminder, we roll those replaced squads down to community development, so they still have some life left in them for David and his crew. And then about 54,000 on 2 detective vehicles. On the fire department side, we were talking about grants. There's actually 2 grants. The first one is 200,000 it's a 90-10 grant for cardiac monitors. And then 2 lines down from that, there's also a 90-10 grant for body armor for when they have to go into active shooter situations or things like that. Obviously, if we don't get a grant, those things won't happen, or we'll have to pay for it a different way. 38,000 for the replacement of a command vehicle. So from a vehicle standpoint, a pretty easy year for the fire department. And then 25,000 for warning, siren maintenance, and then 5,000 for the preemption system. I'm talking about Public Works.
So for Public Works, we have 475,000 for 2 5-yards that are going to get replaced. Those get split 75-25 with water and sewer fund because the staff use both. We have 144,000 for the replacement of the loader, also split. 72,000 for the replacement of the compact excavator, redundant, also split, as well as 30,000 for a compressor and generator for the workshop truck in facility maintenance. They got the truck last year, and so now it's the upfitting for it to have the compressor. This will allow them to be able to go out when vehicles kind of stall out in the field and be able to fill them with fuel or hydraulic fluid.
Looking at buildings and building improvements, again, fiscal year 21, about 4.8 million here. And then next year in fiscal year 22, just projected 4.3. Just a reminder, that includes 4 million each year for Fire Station 3. And then you see that level off to 325,000 a year. A lot of placeholders in here because we're not sure the kind of things that will come up, especially HVAC, electrical systems, stuff like that. In administration, we got 55,000 for a monopole on Cemetery Road that is split with water and sewer. Actually, it's 110 total. And then 8,000 for some exterior improvements at the Mother Rudd House. At the PD, they have a plan that they are working through. This year is about 248,000. Dispatch lockers, some carpet replacement, a third backup power supply, some work on fire protection dry system, switching to a different one, security access, and then phase 1 of 2 for the Gurnee Mills substation work. That may be phase 2 of 2 next year, depending on what they can get done this fiscal year, because there is some funds budgeted for it this fiscal year. As I mentioned multiple times, $4 million for the Fire Station 3, and then just 60,000 for the first part of the parking lot at Fire Station 2, and then just 55,000 for general maintenance stuff that might come up at our existing stations.
So for Public Works, we have 113,000 split for the parking lot resurfacing in the back. There's lots of vehicles that fuel up at Public Works facility, and so that pavement's kind of taking a beating, and we're going to take care of that this year. We have 62,000 to replace floor drains in the center of the truck bay in the main building. It's 20 years old, not strong enough for the fleet that runs over it every day, so we're going to upgrade that, as well as some HVAC rooftop units as part of a multi-year replacement program. And then we have some, the other half of the monopole.
And that is it. Happy to take any questions on the capital plan.
I know it's scary numbers. Anything that strikes the board, any of the trustees that we missed? I have a couple that
And again, we'll see all this again when we go through the budget. Obviously, these are kind of looking out a little ways, and then we'll fine tune it when we get to the budget, and all that stuff will come back before you a couple different times.
Trustee O'Brien?
Just one thing, and I know it'll come up later on, but as long as we're going to be putting $9,000 towards Mother Rudd, which I think is a really nice resource in town, it would be nice if there was some way to put notice out when it's actually open. I've been in there once, and it was only by luck.
That's a Jack thing.
That's an easy one. We can handle that.
All right, so this becomes a basis for what you'll see in the budget, so staff will be working on that for the next couple of months, and then we see it at the end of February. I have two that have kind of come up recently. Only WAGs is all I'm looking for. Leaves, and I gave Jack some ideas, but, I mean, we obviously know this year was kind of a nightmare, and we have some ideas, but I don't know that they'll make the residents happy, because it'll put some burden on them. Just a complete WAG, if we wanted to bring that in-house. I know there's equipment and staffing. I'm just looking for a WAG. I know we have no way to even fund it. We'd have to figure all this out, but in talking to residents, they don't like the idea of bagging. And that may be our only choice, but if I'm going to talk intelligently, I need to be able to balance it with what the costs are. And maybe the board will decide that if that's the most important thing to people, that their grass doesn't turn brown underneath their leaves, that we need to maybe look at that. So I'm only looking for a WAG. Second one, I was looking, we had talked to the state about a decade ago about taking some of their snow removal, because they don't do a very good job. It's not gotten any better. I just read the article on Lake Forest. I know I'm killing you. But I mean, I saw the number the state was going to pay to Lake Forest, and just my own knowledge of snow and ice control. I don't know how they're picking up 33 extra lane miles with no trucks or anything, but if the state continues to perform poorly and we wanted to approach them again, I'm just looking for a WAG on, I know it's tandem snow plowing, it's a different size truck, it's crews, and then we have to figure out what we do with them the rest of the year. I'm just, if I'm going to go back to the state and make a case, I need to just number. I'm not saying we're going to do it. I'm just saying it's better to be prepared with what that cost is, because then we have to figure out a way to raise money to fund it. So but especially the leaves, that I don't ever want to put Jack and Pat and myself through what we went through this fall.
When you see the price tag, you might be changing.
I know, then I'll say, well, I guess all those emails and phone calls aren't so bad, but it's hard for me to talk to a resident about leaves if I don't even know what the cost is for the village to do it themselves. Trustee Bums. Well, we know weather's getting worse because of climate change, so it's probably a pretty safe bet to say the weather's not going to be getting any better. So it's, and you can't make the leaves fall earlier than they do, but it was very painful for Jack, Pat, and I only got the absolute worst that they couldn't deal with got escalated to me, but it was, and that's just what we got. I can only imagine what social media looked like.
We can get some estimates. But
Yeah, I just think we should discuss it.
You're going to be deep into six figures.
All right, but at least the board would be educated about what kind of capital costs we're looking at, if these are services that we want to take on. And if we decide not to, then we have to be confident in our discussion with the residents why we don't want to do that. But we don't have any idea right now. I'm not trying to kill you. Otherwise, I think this is a great capital plan.
Yeah, it's a start. So as you take time to digest it, take a look through it. If there was a project in there that you were expecting that wasn't in there, obviously reach out to us. It's in draft form. We're just getting going on the budget. Same thing goes for the budget. If there's something that's important to you that you'd like to see in the budget, obviously get a hold of Brian or myself before we get too far down the line. But again, at this point, it's in draft format, so we are open for feedback.
Are we going to, Heather, are we going to do a new road inventory road condition inventory? Did we do one recently?
Just went through.
Than in 2019, so that's helped driving this year's plan.
Okay, and that'll be part of the final capital plan and the budget. We'll see what the new rankings are.
I don't know if we've included it in previous.
Yeah, there is a
There's
map in the CIP.
associated with that.
There's an updated map.
Okay, all right, all right.
That document.
Yeah, because that's always a very useful tool. There you go, okay. I'll read this tonight,
Yeah,
I
page
promise.
23.
I have a question.
But it's very useful when you're on the phone with someone and you can say, your street, here's what its grade was, and here's when we think we'll get to it. Okay.
Did you have a question?
Trustee Ross?
I just thought of a question. When you were showing the roads that you're going to repair, Ferndale was one, and Delaney is not, because it was torn up down the middle too, and it's not fixed very well.
So Delaney has a lot thicker pavement cross-section than Ferndale did. At some point, it was close to almost 2 feet thick. So it has a pretty good base for the amount of traffic that comes over it. I know the patching wasn't perfect just because the or the temperature conditions tanked at the end of October there with snow, Halloween and all that. As of right now, we weren't planning it, but if we need to do like a resurfacing or just a skim coat over it in the future, we could tackle it, but it wasn't thought of in this next plan.
Okay.
Aesthetics over function.
Well, it's kind of washboardy at the one end. It's not really good.
We can look at it.
Can we hold the people who did it responsible?
Yeah, we still have retainage on them through, I believe, for a year. So if it gets real bad and we need them to come back out, that's within our right to do so.
Thank you.
All right, well, I know a tremendous amount of work went into this, and it's a valuable tool, and we'll all use it, and we're all going to read it. So thank you. Good presentation. Looking forward to the budget. Okay, so we have no old business.
Correct.
All right, new business. It's approval of ordinance 2019-84, granting a special use permit pursuant to the Gurnee zoning ordinance for Bushido Martial Arts Studio at 6021 Washington Street. Pat?
Sure. So you had a memo from our associate planner, Claire Gable, on this. They are looking to open up in the one of the Market Square buildings, the building on the east side. As it relates to this, sort of a timing issue. So if this came forward today, or if Market Square came forward today, this would be a permitted use. When the PUD was put together in 2017, this wasn't a permitted use. It was a special use, required a special use. So that's why, given the timing, coming forward under the old zoning ordinance, that's why they need the special use. So just something to keep in mind. It was before the Planning and Zoning Board at this meeting, or at that meeting, shared some information about it. Classes are about 1 hour, and only one class will be held at any one time. Got 15-minute breaks in between each class to let people shuffle in, shuffle out. Maximum class size is 8 students. Peak hours are expected to be after 6 p.m., although it is open early in the morning. The 6 p.m., you're familiar with the other businesses that are in that area. We've got Honey Orthodontics, Chiropractor, Dexafit. So this 6 p.m. is after when those businesses are normally closed. Majority of the clients drop off their kids, so they're not hanging out to watch. Actually, there isn't a waiting room or observation area planned, and they're not planning on holding any competitions or seminars. So I did have one question as it relates to the parking on this one. The parking right now out there for Market Square is based on multi-tenant retail, which is a pretty intense use. All the uses out there currently are office uses, so there's plenty of parking for the users that are currently out there, as well as this facility. So as I said, it was before the Planning and Zoning Board back on November 20th and received a unanimous favorable recommendation and is now before you for consideration.
Petitioner here? Hello. I don't think we need you, but I'm glad you're here. Any questions from the board? I think this looks like a great use at this location. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'm going to give it to the ladies. Motion from trustee Thorstensen, second from trustee O'Brien. Roll call, please. Andy?
Palmas.
Aye.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
5-0.
Motion carries. Welcome to the village. We will look forward to your opening, and I think it's a wonderful addition and something new and different that we'll enjoy. The community will enjoy. All right, thank you. All right, next item, item number 2, approval of ordinance 2019-85, amending the annual budget of the Village of Gurnee, County of Lake, State of Illinois for the fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2019, and ending April 30th, 2020.
Sure. So this budget amendment is moving that money around for Bittersweet to get started on the trees and then also pay for the pond maintenance. We had talked about these items earlier on in the year. The other items that we discussed, the paths, the retaining walls, the clubhouse roof replacement, we'll take care of that through the upcoming budget process. This was to get started on this stuff before May 1. So the pond maintenance, that's already actually been completed. We're sitting on the invoice waiting for this amendment to be approved. So they've got a jump start on that to make sure that when the weather improves in the spring, they're ahead of that and those conditions are improving. As it relates to the tree care, the golf course did go out and solicit prices from 3 separate firms. We had a meeting out at the course. Carl Davis, one of our arborists from Public Works, was out there. He's going to be reviewing the bids, talking to the companies, working with Brad out there to try to get one of those firms on board. We'll bring that before the village board. That'll probably be the second meeting in January, that contract. I know Public Works is out there working on cutting a path, an access path into the course for whatever firm we bring on board. But the course got a little bit of a jump start on it by soliciting some prices, but obviously this is our money, so I wanted Public Works to take a look at it. So that will probably be coming the 27th, but like I said, this moves the money around, so this moves some money from the general fund and from the impact fee fund and transfers it into the golf course fund. So the total that we're moving around is $59,000, $50,000 for the tree work and $9,000 for the pond maintenance.
These are smart investments. Questions from the trustees?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee Ross. Roll call, please.
Balmas.
Aye.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right, motion carries. Item number 3, approval of resolution 2019-10.
10.
God, we only did 10 resolutions this year. Adopting a unified communications policy for the Village of Gurnee. So this is what Jack and Catherine went over with us earlier.
Yes.
Anybody think of a question since the beginning of the meeting? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee O'Brien. Roll call, please.
Balmas.
Aye.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right, motion carries. I'll open the floor for public comment. If you'd like to address the board, we just need your name at the microphone.
Good evening. My name's Linda Hind. So good evening, Mayor and board members. My name is Linda Hind. I live at 517 Rockland Avenue in Lake Bluff. I stand before you this evening as a business and commercial property owner in the Village of Gurnee. My business, Air Diffusion System, is located at 3964 and 3994 Grove Avenue. We purchased our first building on 9/11/2001, a day we all remember as horrific, but one we could be proud of our elected officials. My business is located within 900 feet of the property line of Vantage and 1,200 feet of their stacks. For the past 18 years, my employees and myself have been subjected to chemicals in the air that the federal EPA has recognized as dangerous and cancer-causing. I have read the heartbreaking stories of children and adult residents that have become ill due to the release of ETO into the air by Vantage. What I have not heard from the Village of Gurnee is the remedies that you have taken to protect my employees and my neighbors who come to work in this community every day. In July 2015, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Although not one person in my immediate or extended family has ever had breast cancer. My mother was one of 9 children. My father was one of 10. My oncologist, after performing a mastectomy in August of 2015, suggested sending out tissue samples to be evaluated by a firm in California, as I had no family history. The purpose of the test was to find out the chances of the same cancer reoccurring. When the results came back, my oncologist called and told me that I was very fortunate. The chances of the breast cancer that I was diagnosed with reoccurring was less than 5% in 5 years. I asked her if this was indicative of a cancer caused by environmental issues. She told me yes. I will never know if ETOs discharged illegally from the Stacks Advantage caused my cancer. What I do know is the Village of Gurnee has known for well over a year that ETO levels being released were well above limits that could cause cancer. Testing that was performed earlier this year validated that high levels of ETOs were being discharged from Vantage. I am asking this board to act now, not years from now. Demand that the IEPA stop Vantage from releasing ETO levels that are in excess of federal laws. Work with local elected state officials and the governor's office to have existing laws changed. This has to stop. In April of this year, I had a chemical engineer who worked for me leave our company. This morning, my office manager told me that she would be leaving in 2 weeks. She loves her job, but her health has to come first. You are making it hard for small businesses that have invested over $1 million in property to continue to do business in this community. Make the residents and business owners proud of how you are protecting us, not neglecting us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth O'Neill. I am here tonight in support of the Stop ETO organization. 2 weeks ago, we presented you with a petition signed by over 1,100 local Lake County residents asking this board to exercise its home rule authority and pass a nuisance ordinance to ban ETO emissions in the Village of Gurnee, to not only protect Gurnee residents, but to protect all Lake County residents from this cancer-causing gas. I am back here tonight to let you know that this petition now has been signed by over 2,200 people. The number of signatures has doubled in just 2 weeks. Tonight, Stop ETO is presenting this petition at the Waukegan City Council meeting, thus the reason why only a handful of us are here tonight. I know that you all are aware of the very alarming results that came out last week from the Lake County Health Department. 8.86 and 5.29 micrograms per cubic meter of air, 8.86 and 5.29. By anyone's measurement, these test results are horrific. They're terrifying. These concentrations are 100 times higher than the EPA's addressable level. They are magnitudes higher than the ETO levels found in Willowbrook following the seal of Sterigenics. You know as well as I do that Vantage sits about a half mile from Spalding School, a half mile from a school serving children pre-K through second grade. If I had children at that school, I would be pulling them out immediately. Those results are beyond belief. It is not acceptable to say that we are having Vantage look into what might have caused those high readings while allowing them to continue to use ETO every day a half a mile from a school. The appropriate reaction is to demand that Vantage stop using ETO while it investigates. Children's health and lives are at stake. At the very least, the parents need to be made aware of the gravity of the situation. They deserve to know how truly troubling those results are. In my opinion, the results are being downplayed in the statements put out by the village and the school district. More than a year after this community learned about 2 ETO emitters in Lake County, the people, and more importantly, the children of Gurnee and Lake County, continue to be subjected to dangerously high levels of ETO concentrations, 8.86 and 5.29, more than a year later. I am begging you, over 2,200 people who have signed the petition are begging you to please use your home rule authority to do something about this. You have the power to make this better. We appreciate Vantage's efforts to install additional control measures, but last week's results show us and prove to us that they do not work all of the time. 8.86 and 5.29 are the results we are seeing when the company is being subjected to independent monitoring. What can we expect when that scrutiny goes away? How will we ever feel safe knowing that these kinds of results are not only possible, but are the precedent? Stop ETO is an organization that is made up of concerned citizens volunteering their own time, money, and resources in pursuit of a healthier environment for all of us. I know you're sick of hearing us speak at these meetings. I'm sick of speaking at these meetings. I'm a big-time introvert. Being up here is a nightmare for me. I don't even like big parties or get-togethers. I'd rather be home with my kids. I don't want to be spending my time doing this. But I'm doing it because I truly believe it's the right thing to do. Before becoming involved with this issue, I tried to get comfortable. I tried to feel safe under Senate Bills 1852 and 1854, but I just couldn't get there. ETO has no place around schools, no place around small children. It impacts them disproportionately. It's volatile, it's explosive, it's dangerous, it's cancer-causing. The process to fix this problem is moving too slowly. I firmly believe that this wait-and-see approach is something we are all going to come to regret. If you have open questions, please stop these emissions while you figure out the answers. Don't allow us to see another set of results like we did last week. Don't allow our children to be lab rats in this experiment. Please use your power to fix this problem now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? If not, do I have a motion? Oh, wait, you know what? Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, Joyous Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah. We had a spectacular year, so a heartfelt thank you to all of you. We accomplished a lot together. It was a big year for us under Pat's leadership, so a special thank you to him. You rocked, and I know we're going to rock 2020. So everybody safe, warm, joyous holiday, and this is our last meeting of 2019. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by trustee Bomas, second by trustee Thorntonson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.